This game just keeps taking and taking and taking. Throughout this franchise, the one guy I could count on for a fun time was, well, honestly, it was Bowser Jr. because it was fun fighting his robots, and to ultimately see him fail like the worm that he was. But then there was Kamek, the highlight of the shit game Sticker Star. He's been a good character, a fun person to play the behind-the-scenes operations of Bowser's army, the guy who mentors him into all of his schemes, the guy who stole the role of Kammy Koopa from the Paper Mario games and made it his own. But this is an honest-to-God shit show in execution. People complained about this type of boss in Resident Evil 6, and now it's here in a Nintendo-approved product. The whole, you just have to survive long enough boss fight, because in this level, you end up fighting Kamek 3 times before he capitulates. It's annoying because every time he gets away, he does the same thing. Blocking off part of the level with a doorway swapping puzzle that you have to fight enemies, hit switches, and defeat Kamek to get around. It'd be a creative part of the level and a fun time if it wasn't for the fact that you have to do this crap 3 times. Also a Dream World section for each one because that's always fun. To be fair, these are Dream World bosses, so I should have expected that. Kamek doesn't spend a lot of his time in a horde and instead pals around with several clones. Other times he's by himself, and throughout these fights, Kamek comes with a ton of weapons at his disposal. One of the worst ones is his magic shapes, which you just have to memorize where they're coming from. The big problem with this attack for me is that the game doesn't make it obvious that the shapes are tied to specific directions 100% of the time to help the player figure it out. So I just ended up trying to dodge these by blind luck. Then there's his cloned magic attack, which gets a bit better since it doesn't hurt so much. Kamek will clone himself and have all those clones line up to fire a line of magic missiles and then tackle Mario. The shuffling's a bit too fast, so it's hard to figure out who is the correct Kamek to dodge the attack. This is all in the first fight, of course. There's nothing too wrong with it other than Kamek's not dying. The second fight introduces minion summoning to the mix with gangs of Spinies and Goombas, and then in an army of dry bones. These attacks are light, easy to dodge, don't damage too much, but the QT to dodge them is wonky and hard to accomplish. The third fight is where things fell to their worst, obviously, since Kamek's magic shapes expand to include a lot more types. The most notable change is Kamek's clones are solidified better, and it becomes a 4-man encounter to take it all apart, and the obvious addition with the colored Kameks is that they can frequently heal and increase the stats of the other Kameks. Thankfully, this only happens once or twice a round and takes one of their turns in the process. However, every turn you'll also have to deal with the Kamek's ring toss game where they set rings for each Kamek around Mario, and Mario has to jump over all 4 to avoid it completely, and the Kameks just love to dick around with the attack timing on this one, so the player will have to be on their toes to get through it. It's just one of those little ways that this game loves to make the player's life worse. Thumb on the enemy's scale, remember? Also, Kamek in this phase gets his background chase attack, which takes ages to dodge. And all the while, you feel the growing sense of dread that any mistake will hit you for heavy damage and make the entire attempt a waste of time. Kamek only barely takes retaliation damage if you make it through all 3 waves of these thumps and his magic missiles. It's not the worst attack that Kamek has, but it is the longest, and it's very despair-inducing. This entire boondoggle of a horribly extended boss encounter has been a bullshit difficult mess, with Alpha Dream giving Kamek tons of screen time and all these attacks to beat the shit out of Mario with. The Kameks also have so much goddamn health that by the final phase, you are almost required to pull out constant Luiginary attacks when you are finally allowed your turn. The ratio from enemy to Mario turns isn't as bad as other fights, but Kamek has heavily damaging attacks which can wreck your shit if you do an average job at dodging them. There was nothing about this entire level that was enjoyable. You have to fight this turd 3 times in Dream Team, and each time he has all these damaging attacks, all this health that isn't tied to a single health bar, and by the end it's all for naught when he just decides that he's not dead until the game makes him dead. By the end, it doesn't feel like Mario killed Kamek, it was more like Alpha Dream called his number and that was that. Heck, for laughs, Kamek could have just walked away from the whole game alive and well by the end. It's about as anticlimactic an ending as we got for the level that's in this game, and lastly, this is not the way that you hype up a final battle. You should be doing that by the early game if you want it to work well, by showing off the villain, giving him taunts to the player, and actually doing things in the plot. Not all at once with challenge upon challenge stacked up like a pyramid inside a labyrinthine final level. If you do that, it feels more like you're padding the game, to be frank.